Welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 477 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. Here at the Unpopular Podcast, I normally ask you to agree with me. I'm asking you to hear me out. When you have two of the best teams in the NFL, when you have the Detroit Lions going up against the Buffalo Bills, it is obviously going to be promoted as a possible Super Bowl preview. You have the number 2 team in the AFC, the number 1 team in the NFC. This game is going to be, or is hoped to be, let's say, full of fireworks, and you're going to see the best of the best, possibly. And when you play a team as good as the Bills, or when you play a team as good as the Detroit Lions, I usually say on this podcast that these are the games where you can take the most out of. The most important data is collected through these games. Because, yes, it's important to beat who you can beat. It's you play who's on your schedule. Obviously, you don't know what the season is going to hold for every team. But to me, you can't take much out of playing Giants, and I'm no offense to the Giants, but come on now. We'll talk about the Ravens and Giants shortly, but you can't take much out of a Giants game more than you can take out of a game against a possible Super Bowl contender. And when you look at the score, the Buffalo Bills beat the Detroit Lions 48-42. You'd think to yourself, oh man, this, high flying, high points, touchdown after touchdown, which is true. But as surprising as it is, and I'm going to sound like a hater, I know, but it's true. The data that I collected out of this game is simple. It's going to be extremely tough for either one of these teams at this moment to win a Super Bowl. Now, I'm not saying that neither team is great. I'm not saying that you can argue, obviously records will say different, but you can argue that the Buffalo Bills has been the best team in the AFC at least. We'll talk about the Chiefs in a second, but you can argue that the Buffalo Bills has been the best team, and I'm not going to say you've been wrong. Almost weekly, I have to come in here and say how wrong I was about my projections with this Buffalo Bills team. I thought that it would be a struggle this year, seeing how much went out the door this offseason or last offseason. I just didn't think it was going to matriculate in a good season. How wrong I am, or how wrong I was. I will admit that. Yes, I was wrong. I'm not above saying how wrong I am or not. You know what I'm saying? And I've kind of been right about the Detroit Lions. I thought that if there was going to be any year that the Detroit Lions was going to be great, it would be this year. You came off of a very impressive season last year, making it to the NFC Championship. And you hope that a team that brings back almost all of their core and gets key pieces was going to improve. And what do you know? I mean, they're the number 1 seed in the NFC. So all that is true. But after this game, I still feel, I'm not going to say much different, but I think that I thought it would be an easier road to the Super Bowl for both of these teams, seeing as how the season has unwind. I don't know about that right now. Let's start with the Buffalo Bills. Let me first attack the Josh Allen as this MVP notion. I have been adamant this year on Lamar Jackson being the MVP. I think how important he is to his team. I think the fact that he's playing better than both his previous MVP seasons. It would be very hard for me to look at what he's done this season and not think that he could or should be the MVP. But I also understand both optics. I also understand storyline, and I also understand record. And the reason why I'm not going to necessarily say changing my stance, but the reason why I understand completely the people that are saying that Josh Allen is the MVP, and Josh Allen, rightfully so, might win it, is because almost everything that I said coming into the season has come to fruition for this Buffalo Bills team in a certain way. And this is what I mean by that. Remember, I said the Buffalo Bills was going to struggle. That I was emphatically wrong about. But I said that they were going to struggle because there was a lot on Josh Allen's shoulders. When you lose the pieces that you lose, Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs, when you lose all the defensive pieces that they lost, I thought that there was a huge amount of pressure, huge amount of responsibility on the shoulders of Josh Allen. And while I had reservations that he was going to be able to do it or not, what we've seen this season is there are still a lot on Josh Allen's shoulders. Yes, Hollins has been much better. Keon Coleman is coming along. Dawson Knox is still really good. Dalton Kincaid is really good. Shakur is good. The pieces around Josh Allen is much better than I gave them credit for. I will admit that. But there's still a lot on Josh Allen's plate. The reason why I understand, and I wouldn't even be mad if he did win the MVP, is because he has taken that pressure. He's taken the amount of quote unquote burdens on his shoulder, and he's exceeded. Josh Allen, not only are the Bills one of the best teams in football, but he is by far, I'll say this, statistic-wise, Lamar Jackson beats Josh Allen in almost every category outside of wins. However, Josh Allen bolds more responsibility to the offense or responsibility to the overall team success of the Buffalo Bills than Lamar Jackson does with the Baltimore Ravens. On top of that, the Baltimore Ravens have more losses than the Bills. I still am going to go out and say that Lamar Jackson is better than Josh Allen, but I'm not negating what we've seen from Josh Allen this year. Has been nothing short of incredible. And I think that if you put wins, losses aside, the clear-cut MVP this year would be Joe Burrow. But because they just can't get their act together, I understand that right now it's probably Josh Allen. But let me talk about the Bills as a whole before I discuss the Detroit Lions. The reason why, especially these last few weeks, Josh Allen has put up monster numbers. Maybe not as much the San Francisco game, because we know San Francisco was just dealing with, it's just the season from hell from them. But the reason why these gaudy numbers are getting highlighted with Josh Allen is because he needs to put up these numbers. I say this all the time. Winning... Whoa, why did my voice do that? Wow, I'm sorry, guys. I say this all the time. Winning blankets a lot of issues. And greatness also is a perfect blanket for issues. What I mean by that is, when we talk about the Buffalo Bills, we talk about the record, we talk about how good they've been, we talk about Josh Allen. One thing that doesn't get talked about enough is their issue with stopping the run, or the back end of their defense has not been great, especially these last few games, or the fact of the offensive line hasn't been the best. Yo, I know that these games can happen, but the Detroit Lions put 42 on this team's head. And while, yes, the Buffalo Bills did win and put 48, you allowed 42 points. You allowed Jared Goff to throw for almost 500 yards. He threw for 494 yards. Amon-Ra St. Brown alone had 193 yards. Now, I know that Amon-Ra is a top 5 wide receiver, but still. While yes, you have Josh Allen, and that is always going to be the talking point. That's always going to be bullet number one as to why a person would have faith in the Buffalo Bills. But as great as Josh Allen is, he doesn't completely mask the issues with this Buffalo Bills team that they could run into if they go up against the Chiefs, if they go up against the Ravens and the Ravens play the way that they're supposed to play. I'm not saying that Buffalo, I will say this, when they're playing at their best, I don't think that there's a team, at least in the AFC, that can stop them because of, like I said, bullet number one, how good Josh Allen is, number 17. But if he isn't Superman, if he doesn't put on that cape, this team does have some issues. While players have been playing out there, James Cook has been incredible. Even in this game, he rushed for 105 yards. What if you have a run-stopping defense? What I'm saying is, the Bills have been playing with fire this whole year because they've been able to. Because they have the ultimate extinguisher this year in Josh Allen. But what this game showed me is, even as great as Josh Allen is, it came to an onside kick that went their way that essentially won the game. Their defense couldn't stop the Detroit Lions at all. Now, the Detroit Lions is a great team, but still. What happens if you go up against a offense that is rolling, Which it did. But this isn't me poo-pooing on the win, man. Shouts out to the Bills. They did what they were supposed to do at the end. Which brings me to the Lions. I say this all the time. And the Lions, the reason why I'm actually more alarmed about the Lions, not just because they lost, not just because they gave up 48 points, but I've never seen a team in my memory, I've never seen a team that almost weekly loses key players. I know the 49ers have gone through a plethora of injuries this year, and I hope that everyone obviously gets healthy. But, if you see the list of players that are out for the Lions, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and if you see the list of players that not only are out for the Detroit Lions, but are projected to be out for the season, it looks almost as long as a grocery list. I think I talked about this last episode. An underrated, extremely important, but underrated trait with every Super Bowl champion is how healthy their team is. I don't think that there's any question who the best team in the NFC is, at least, if the teams are fully healthy. I think it's the Detroit Lions by a country mile. That's even including the 49ers. That's even including the Eagles. But we're living in reality. In reality, the Detroit Lions is one of the most injured teams, especially on the defensive side of the ball in the National Football League. And it even affected off David Montgomery's looked to probably out for the season. And they had a perfect 1-2 punch with him and Jahmyr Gibbs. Not saying that Jahmyr Gibbs can't take on the brunt of the running offense, but that was a superpower, a super weapon that the Lions had. You had one running back that was more physical, that can get you at the 1 yard line and you're going to score. Or you can have one of the fastest players in the league in Jahmyr Gibbs at the other running back. What I'm saying is I'm starting to lose more and more faith, and not because of how the Detroit Lions played, but because you're going to need to be healthy in the playoffs, or as healthy as you can get. And what it's looking like is week after week, they're losing piece after piece. And it's not like they're losing, no offense to anybody, but it's not like they're losing, unimportant people. They're losing key players. Remember, Aiden Hutchinson, who is by far their best defensive player, is not there. Who is looking to get back for the, if they make the Super Bowl. That's the only time he really can get back. So, as great as Jared Goff can be, as great as Amara St. Brown, as great as Tim Patrick, as great as this Jameson Williams, nutrition, I think, is going to be the death of this team. They could win it. I'm not saying they can't. I'm saying I'm losing faith because when you look at someone like the Eagles, they're way more healthier as a whole than the Detroit Lions are. And you saw that. Look, I'm not saying the Detroit Lions is the best team in football as far as defensively, but a fully healthy Detroit Lions team isn't getting 48 put on their head. You can question the onside kick from Dan Campbell, and I understand questioning it, but that is an omission. That's telling the team, that's telling the Bills, that's telling the viewers, I cannot trust my defense right now. I have ultimate faith that if we have the ball, we have a shot offensively. But I can't trust my defense because we're hurting. So, as great as the Detroit Lions, I think they understand how dire this situation is, defensive, like injury-wise. Because if not, as I know Dan Campbell is a all-or-nothing type guy, but play calling is going to show you how you see your team. And he sees, our defense, we're giving it all we got. We just can't stop them right now because we don't have a full defense. Obviously, it's one game, and we still have a couple weeks before the season's over and the playoffs start. But while both teams demonstrate how great they could be, especially offensively, it also, there's glaring weaknesses on the defense for both teams, and we'll see. But congratulations to the Buffalo Bills for beating the Detroit Lions 48-42. This game was a very important game for both the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Eagles. Obviously, you have two incredibly good teams. You have two high-seeded teams. You have the top of the AFC North, and then you have the top of the NFC East. And the noise around the Eagles made this game extremely important. The Philadelphia Eagles beat the Pittsburgh Steelers 27-13. I said that it was important because it's about optics. Optics are important for a lot of reasons. You want to go into the playoffs playing your best football. And it seems like while their record is good, I think they're on a 10 or 11 game win streak at this point. The Philadelphia Eagles hasn't looked great. They haven't looked complete. They haven't looked like a synchronized unit. The defense would play great. The offense would struggle. The run game would play great. The passing game would struggle. You have A.J. Brown coming out and saying that their biggest thing that they need to work on is the passing. Jalen Hurts has a broken finger on his left hand. Like it's been so much. Obviously, we have Nick Sirianni and his personality. If you're gonna have a bunch of turmoil and stuff spiraling around your team, it's important to nip it in the bud before the playoffs. And this game, it seemed like they nipped it in the bud. While the numbers aren't gaudy, I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers defense did a really good job. Jalen Hurts had 290 yards, which isn't the most for a quarterback, obviously. Saquon Barkley, they shut down Saquon Barkley. He had 65 rushing yards. A.J. Brown came to play. He had 110 yards. This is why I said that I am kind of leaning towards the Eagles right now as the best team. At no point did the Eagles look great on Sunday. But and I know the score doesn't say domination, but they dominated the Pittsburgh Steelers. And when the defense is playing as good as it's playing, when the offense is rolling both running wise and passing, it's almost impossible to beat this team. I will say that the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens, when they played the Philadelphia Eagles, did suffer from a similar fate as far as how they got to the loss, and we'll talk about that in a second. I will say that when this Philadelphia Eagles team is rolling, they're almost unstoppable. But turmoil cannot be there. Look, I don't know A.J. Brown personally. I don't know Jalen Hurts. I don't know anybody personally. And I'm not saying that you have to be best friends to win the ultimate, to win a championship. But what I am saying is there can't be turmoil. You have to be on the same page to win it all. And if you're not, look, Jalen Hurts has limitations. Jalen Hurts in no way, shape, or form is Josh Allen. He's not Joe Burrow. He's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Lamar Jackson. Jalen Hurts has limitations. But Jalen Hurts has proven to be at least, at the minimum, a decent quarterback. Obviously, he's more than that, but at the minimum. And A.J. Brown has shown to be a top 5 receiver in the league. So you have a top 5 receiver. You probably have a top 5 number 2 option in Devontae Smith. Maybe the best number 2 option. I think it's probably between him and Jalen Waddle, which is crazy because both went to Alabama. And so did Jalen Hurts, actually. And then you have, at least statistically this year, the best running back in the league. It's going to be tough. Going to be tough to stop. But the Philadelphia Eagles showed that they've showed this a lot this season. They can win pretty, they can win ugly, they can win any way they need to win. A lot of these games haven't been blowouts, and they've won. Now, you can kind of say the same thing about the Kansas City Chiefs, which we'll talk about in a second, but still. But I also have to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers for a second. I'm not going to be a quote-unquote fair weather viewer. I'm not going to say that they're Super Bowl caliber 1 week, and then they're god-awful the next because they lose. That's not what I'm going to do. Even though I think that the Philadelphia Eagles controlled this game, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers defensively was incredible. They were able to slow down Saquon Barkley, who is on pace to have a 2,000-yard season, who is in MVP conversations. They held him to 65 rushing yards. That is tough. And I talked about, here's my thing. Momentum plays a huge part in sports. I cannot state that enough. And we saw 2 games that was completely swung by momentum. I'll talk about the Colts and Denver game because I was one. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But it was this one. And I said that the Ravens losing to the Eagles and the Pittsburgh Steelers losing to the Eagles kind of felt a tad bit similar in this bit because it was mistakes that, in my opinion, cost the Baltimore Ravens. Missed field goals. It was missed field goals. When you're playing a team as good as the Philadelphia Eagles, you can't make egregious mistakes. You can't have turnovers. You can't miss field goals. You can't. Lamar Jackson didn't play the best, but he played good enough to win. Hell, the Baltimore Ravens outgained the Philadelphia Eagles by like a lot. It was just mistakes. With this Pittsburgh Steelers game, that Najee Harris fumble. I think at that time, the Steelers were down 13-10. After that, obviously, the Eagles went on a 14-3 run. I'm not putting the blame on Najee Harris, but what I'm saying is when you're playing a team as good as the Eagles, when you're playing a team that has Super Bowl aspirations and is good enough to have Super Bowl aspirations, it's the little things that could derail an entire game. And once that fumble happened, it just felt like the momentum completely shifted to the Eagles. So I still have my limitations. I still have my fears about this Pittsburgh Steelers offense, especially with George Pickens, not being there. He didn't play this game. I still think it's very important that they find a number 2 receiver. Obviously, the season is winding down, so I don't know how much you can do that, but and they definitely need George Pickens. I know Pat Freiermuth can probably get more catches, or touches, but yeah. One. I'm not obviously that doesn't take away from the grand scheme of the game, but momentum is a crazy thing to have, and it's a crazy thing to go against in any sport. And I feel that Najee Harris fumble gave the Philadelphia Eagles, again, when that happened, it was 13-10, I believe. It gave the Eagles the momentum they needed to overcome. So, shouts out to the Philadelphia Eagles for beating the Pittsburgh Steelers 27-13. Playing with fire can get you where you need to go until it can't. When you play with fire all season, there could be an opportunity where that one thing can derail an entire season. Now, I'm not saying that Patrick Mahomes having a high ankle sprain is derailing the season. I'm not saying, we saw Patrick Mahomes win a Super Bowl on a high ankle sprain, so. But the Kansas City Chiefs beat the Cleveland Browns 21-7. And the biggest talking point out of this game was Patrick Mahomes obviously getting hurt, having a high ankle sprain, now considered day-to-day. And what the Cincinnati or what the Kansas City Chiefs should do moving forward. I think this is an interesting situation. It's an interesting situation because of how this season has gone this year. I hear a bunch of media pundits saying that the Kansas City Chiefs need to sit Patrick Mahomes until the playoffs, even if that means that they lose the rest of their games and someone like the Buffalo Bills win and get the number 1 seed. I understand that thinking. Let me first say that I understand the thinking because if there's any team that has proven over these last few years that they can go into anywhere in the playoffs and win, it is the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know if you want to play with fire like that, seeing as though they're starting to nickname the AFC Championship the Kansas City Chiefs or Arrowhead Invitational, because most of the time the Kansas City Chiefs have such a good record that the AFC Championships have been held in Kansas City. And I understand the most important thing, especially for a team trying to three-peat, especially for a team that is projected to be as good and look to be as good as this Kansas City Chiefs team is, the most important thing is health in the postseason. So I get that. But I started this little segment about playing with fire. The Kansas City Chiefs have been playing with fire all year. Now they've been winning, but winning these 1-point games, 1-possession games, having to block a field goal, having missed kick, like the ways that they've won, you'd think that voodoo was just running rampant in Kansas City from the Raiders, looking dominant until they didn't. The Broncos blocked kick. To be completely honest with you, if the Kansas City Chiefs looked as good as they've looked throughout the years, I would agree wholeheartedly that you should sit Patrick Mahomes. But you and I both know that this Kansas City Chiefs team has not looked great. They found ways to win. For that, I give them the ultimate credit. They found ways to win week after week. But they've also had to find ways to win week after week. And when I said playing with fire, this could be the fire extinguisher, Patrick Mahomes not being there. And as much as nutrition and health is important, which it is, so is momentum going into the playoffs. And don't get me wrong, I know how great Patrick Mahomes is. I think he's one of, if not the greatest quarterback in the league or in NFL history. But that's a tall task. Sitting someone until the playoffs, or maybe a week or two. So that means you have a game before the playoffs. Asking them to sit and then to rev up their engines for the playoffs when, even at their best, even perfectly healthy, this Kansas City Chiefs team hasn't looked great offensively. That's a tough ask. Especially when the first team you could possibly see is a team like Denver in the playoffs, or a team like Baltimore. I don't know if that's something that you really want to do. So I don't know if, again, I know we saw him win a Super Bowl, but that was the last game of the season. You had to. Maybe you sit him again. The schedule also doesn't give them any favors as well. They have like 3 games in 10 days. They have the Saturday game coming up. They have Christmas. Then I think they have Sunday. That's tough. So at that, I would probably sit him. Yeah, I would probably sit him 1 or 2 of these games, but I don't know. I know that's tough. You're going to need to, the Kansas City Chiefs are going to need to lean on their defense. And while their defense has been good and great at times, there's only so much, kind of like the Cleveland Browns, the team that they just played. There's only so much a defense can do when their offense isn't matching the level of play. It's tough. And there's really not much to say about the Cleveland Browns in this case. Like, I talk about Russell Westbrook a lot on this podcast. And I say that at this point of his career, he is what he is. If you think that you're going to turn Russell Westbrook into a consistent 3-point shooter at this state of his career, when he hasn't done it his entire career, I don't know what to tell you. So Russell Westbrook has seen his most successful seasons as a poor 3-point shooter. He's the only player in NBA history that has 4 seasons averaging a triple-double. He has the most triple-doubles in NBA history. So to think that you better turn into Steph Curry just doesn't seem like that's going to happen. I say all that to say, if you think that this is going to be the time, this is going to be the moment where Jameis Winston stops throwing interceptions, I don't know what to tell you. Jameis Winston, who is who he is. He is an incredible watch at times. He's a fun player. He has quotes for days. I think when he's playing his absolute best, he is an incredible quarterback. I mean, I know we talk about the 30 interception season, but he also had 30 plus touchdowns, which is a lot. But he did have 30. He is a interception machine. If you were a betting person, I'm not a betting person, but if you were a betting person, I think probably the safest bet every single week is Jameis Winston throws an interception, at least one. He threw 3 this game and got benched. I don't think that the Cleveland Browns have the worst quarterback situation, but they don't have a good one. Because Jameis Winston has proven that he cannot be your number 1 quarterback, and you think that you have Super Bowl aspirations. That's just not, that 2 and 2 does not equal 4 in that sense. And then you have Deshaun Watson, who hasn't been great either when he comes back. So Cleveland is a very interesting case because I'm thinking to myself, what do you do? Do you hit the reset button? But you have really good, and that's the thing. Like, you have really good pieces. David Njoku's really good. Elijah Moore has come on this season. Jarrett Jeudy has rejuvenated his season. You still have an incredible defense. Denzel Ward, Myles Garrett. Like, what do you do? Because you could say that you're a quarterback away, but the way that you divvied up this money and the way that you divvied up contracts, it's going to be tough finding a quarterback that, you still have Deshaun Watson's deal. So I don't know. The Cleveland Browns is just in a tough situation. I'm not going to lie, a tough situation that they probably put themselves in, but a tough situation altogether. But congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs for beating the Cleveland Browns 21-7. I want to talk about this, one of the games, because we had two Monday Night Football games. I want to talk about one of the games now, and that is the Minnesota Vikings beating the Chicago Bears 30-21. Did you know that the Minnesota Vikings, I think they have like a 30% chance of getting the number 1 seed in the NFC? Like, they have, I think, the Seahawks, Green Bay, and the Detroit Lions. If they win all those games, I think they have a 98% chance of being the number 1 seed. Because I know that the Eagles have to play like Dallas, Washington, and somebody else. What you saw in this game is what it looks like to be on two sides of the ball. What it looks like to be on the top of the mountain or ascending to the top of the mountain, and what it looks like to be in the valley, in the pit. I understand that there is still a hesitation to really crown this Minnesota Vikings team a legit Super Bowl contender because of everything that we've seen for the career of Sam Darnold. Because if you look at the roster, it's also crazy. A roster that lost someone like Danielle Hunter has still been incredible. But when you look at this roster, there's no question that you'd think that this team was a Super Bowl caliber team. You have arguably the best wide receiver in football in Justin Jefferson. You have one of the best two options in Jordan Addison. You have T.J. Hawkinson. You have Aaron Jones, I'm sorry. Like this, that is a squad. And then they have one of the best defenses with arguably the best defensive coordinator in football in Brian Flores. Like, that's tough. So the only reservation would be Sam Darnold, because we see what he's looked like majority of his career. But this is yet another week where Sam Darnold plays incredible. 231 yards. And they beat down on this Chicago team. I understand that there was extra motivation because of Randy Moss. It came out that he had some type of cancer. I hope that he has a speedy recovery. I hope that he's able to beat it. He is one of the greatest football players to ever play. I am on record saying that I think he's the greatest wide receiver ever. I know he may not have the amount of accolades as someone like a Jerry Rice, but if I'm drafting a wide receiver first, I'm going with Randy Moss. So I hope for a speedy recovery. 8-4. But I think that at least for this game and tacking on what we've seen throughout this whole season, we have to. The Vikings continue to do nothing more than prove the doubters like myself wrong. This is a great team. Yes, Sam Darnold can have some stinkers. Cool. They're still one of the best teams in football. And one underrated trait and a very important trait is being a complete team. This is a complete team. There's not much of a drop off from the offense to the defense. But when they're both playing at a high level, it is damn near unstoppable. So it's they are ascending. I know a lot. Again, it's hard to wrap your head around because like Sam Darnold, I remember what he looked like for the Jets. But if there is somebody that has a comeback play of the year, I think that should be locked up. I think Sam Darnold should win that in a landslide. And this Minnesota team is one of the best. Which brings me to the pit, which brings me to the valley. I don't remember who said this, but I do think it's extremely true. So I apologize. I can't give you the credit for saying this, whoever said it, but I don't think Caleb Williams has ever gone through this. I understand that he had some rough patches at USC. I understand that he had, some rough patches at Oklahoma. But I don't think that in his entire football career, I don't think Caleb Williams has ever had a stretch like this. And what I mean is a stretch where he doesn't know what he's looking at on a regular basis. If there was a poster child for being lost in the league right now, it would be Caleb Williams. When he looks great, he looks great. Let me first say that. But when he doesn't, it looks like the game is going at Mach speed for him. And he cannot catch up. Now, I do think a lot of this is the fault of how the Bears just handled this whole situation. Not firing Matt Eberflus before they drafted him. Keeping him on longer than they should. Some of the play calling. It just didn't. I think that it's difficult anytime, but I think it's just too difficult for a rookie to really adapt to a system that isn't structured for him. And as we've seen, Caleb has not shown the ability to overcome incompetency from a coaching staff and from an organization, which has to be a requirement when playing for the Chicago Bears. At least that's what it seemed like. But this has been a season from hell when we talk about this Bears team. Expectation is a darn thing, bro. There's people that had the Bears in the Super Bowl. Don't get me wrong. I think that's crazy. But don't get me wrong. I understand the Bears have one of the best rosters in football. We talk about the Minnesota Vikings. The Bears have a better roster than them. Well, they don't have Justin Jefferson. They have Keenan Allen. They have DJ Moore. They have Rome Odunze. They have DeAndre Swift. They have Cole Kmet. They have a better roster on defense, but when you don't have the person coaching wise to bring it together, when the quarterback is struggling, and when I say season from hell, it's like not just the fact that they're not playing well, but the fact of they have been regressing week after week after week. Like I said, you look at the Minnesota Vikings, they're going up. When you look at the Chicago Bears, it seems like they're just getting worse weekly. And that's why I hate it, bro. And I say this all the time, man. That's one. There's a lot of things I repeatedly say on this podcast. A lot of them. Talking about quarterbacks. People say I talk about Lamar Jackson too much. Cool. I talk about Golden State a lot because Golden State and their rise and fall, I guess you can say, is a microcosm to a lot of other sports, a lot of other, in life. One thing that I talk about constantly on this podcast is fit matters. And one reason why fit is so important is because I don't think a perfect example, bro. If you want to know a poster child to fit matters and how fit can derail a career, look at Cam Reddish. The whole fit matters thing started for Cam Reddish back in college. I understand the allure of going to a big school. I do. I understand the allure of going to a Duke. I understand the allure of going to a UNC. I understand the allure of going to a Kentucky. I get it. But something that a lot of people say, something that I say is, what's more important? The school with the big name or the school that benefits and caters to your play style, that's going to get the best out of you? I have no question that Duke is a great organization basketball-wise. I mean, look at some of the players that they have in the league. Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, Kyrie Irving, Jason Tatum. Duke is Duke. If you want to go to the league quick, go to Duke. I get it. But if you look at Cam Reddish's game from high school, the last thing he needed to do was play third fiddle to a Zion Williamson and a RJ Barrett. He should have went to a school that he would be the number one option. Then you go to the league and you don't know how to be that number one option anymore. And then you have the whole New York situation. I say all that to say, when you are Caleb Williams and you go to an organization that essentially doesn't understand how to, they doesn't really understand how to use you and highlights your best abilities, that could set you back. You want an NFL term? Josh Rosen. Josh Rosen just could not get in the perfect situation for him. That's why I am so happy for Sam Darnold, because it looked like he was following the Josh Rosen route. It didn't work anywhere for Sam Darnold, but now it's working wonders because he found the perfect fit. Caleb Williams I don't think Chicago, at least the coaching staff that he had, isn't the perfect fit. And I don't trust that the organization that had Eberflus there as long as they did, I don't trust that they're going to hire the perfect person. So It's tough in Chicago, man. They've lost, 8 straight now? That sucks. But shouts out to Minnesota for beating Chicago 30-12. Hey, man. One thing that when you do this podcasting stuff, right? When you do anything that you put out to the world, you open yourself up to criticism. That's just how it is. If you're going to accept praise, you have to accept criticism. Not saying that you have to make it your being, but and the amount of Chargers fans that has come to my line after I said that the Chargers are only beating bad teams and they've struggled mightily with good teams and playoff teams, the amount of people that are saying I'm wrong, or I don't know what I'm talking about, or I don't watch the games, or I'm taking too much out of what we saw against that Baltimore Ravens team. Like, I don't know what I'm talking about. This is yet another example. What are we going to say about this one? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat the LA Chargers 40-17. Complete domination. The worst part about this game, if I'm not mistaken, is how quickly it got out of hand for the Chargers. Baker Mayfield, 288 yards. Bucky Irving, 117 yards. Mike Evans, 159 yards. I think there are two huge misleading stats in this league right now. That is just how good the Ravens' run defense is and just how good the Chargers' overall defense is. I think the Ravens is misleading because they've been better over the last 2 to 4 weeks. So I will shout the Ravens out for that, and I think I'm going to talk about them next. But it's easy to have the number one rushing defense when teams don't rush on you like that because they get most of their points from passing. They get most of their yardage from passing. If you're a very poor pass protecting team, they're going to pass more than run. So you have less opportunity to stop a run than the pass. So your team is always going to look great at rush defense because teams don't rush on you. This Chargers team for the longest had one of, if not the best ranked defense in football. Then I'm like, hold on now. Who have the Chargers played? I'm going to look it up. The best ranked defense has played, I'll just say the quarterbacks. They've played, I'll say it in the wins. They played Gardner Minshew. They played Bryce Young. They played Bo Nix. They played, I think that was Spencer Rattler. They played Deshaun Watson. They played Will Levis. They obviously played Joe Burrow, but we saw what Joe Burrow did in that second half. And they played interception-filled Kirk Cousins. Let me tell you the quarterbacks they lost to. Justin Fields, Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes again, and Baker Mayfield. In fact, in those games, The Steelers scored 20. The Chiefs scored 17. Cardinals scored 17. The Ravens scored 30. Chiefs scored 19. And the Bucs put 40 on their head. What I'm saying is this. Let's not get this defense isn't that great. When they play good teams, when they play teams that they could see in the playoffs, when they play teams that are above 500, they struggle. As much as I love Jim Harbaugh, as great as a coach that he is, this team continues to demonstrate who they are. They're a team that right now, I'm not saying they can't get better and they won't get better. Right now, they're a team that excels at beating bottom-feeding teams and struggles when they play top-tier teams or teams that they can see in the playoffs. So I don't have much faith in them in the playoffs. Don't get me wrong. They've had a great season. This team is a scary good team, especially when they're firing on all cylinders offensively. I still have my reservations about Baker Mayfield being the man as far as like we've seen the best of Baker Mayfield, then we've seen the worst of Baker Mayfield. But even in that, they put 40 on the Chargers' head. And not having J.K. Dobbins is huge. Yeah, I know. He's a number one running back. He's a number one option for a reason. It's just, I don't know. I understand people want to say I'm wrong, or I don't know what I'm talking about, or they want to look at my subscription size or number of views and be like, I don't know what I'm talking about. Cool. But this is yet another week where I'm not going to say proven right, but there's more evidence that strengthens what I'm talking about. Look, I think shouts out to Oregon product. I think Justin Herbert's a good quarterback. I do think he's always dealing with injuries. And I do think that this team needs to address some issues, especially the wide receiver position. Ladd McConkey should not be your number one receiver. He's a rookie. But getting 40 put on your head by the Bucs, a team that does not have their number 2 receiver for the season, and Mike Evans had almost 160 yards on you alone. Yeah, shouts out to the Bucs for beating the Chargers 40-17. I don't got to talk about this game much, man. The Ravens beat the Giants 35-14. Lamar Jackson had more touchdowns than incompletions. He threw for 290 yards. I think he rushed for 65 yards, so that's over 300 yards. That's over 350 yards, I believe. Derrick Henry didn't have to do much. He only had 67 yards rushing. This was total down. This is exactly what I thought. You had a Ravens team coming off of a bye week going against the team that has by far the worst quarterback room in football. You know? There's not much to say. I understand. I think that if Lamar Jackson didn't lose as many games as he's lost. Now, I'm not saying that some of it is on Lamar Jackson. You know, you're the quarterback. You have to win these games. But I do think a lot of this season is on external factors, i.e. kicking, i.e. defense. But I will admit that even through that, Lamar Jackson has to be better in a lot of those games. But I think if Lamar Jackson had the same record as someone like a Josh Allen, I think he'd by far be the best or MVP. But that's not the case. And this is what should be expected. You should beat on teams that aren't good. The Giants is probably the worst team in football, and that's even in a league that has the Carolina Panthers, like the Jets. You should win. You only have one really good player that's playing right now. Two, you have Brian Burns and you have Malik Neighbors. Dexter Lawrence is out. Kayvon Thibodeau, he's cool, but he doesn't really make an impact. So when you have Tommy DeVito and Drew Lock as your quarterback room, that's you know. But yeah, Rashad Bateman went crazy. Never mind. I'm not. Oh boy. There's also a reason. Side note: there's also a reason why I have not given you guys one update this entire season about my fantasy. Yeah, shouts out to the Baltimore Ravens for beating the Giants 35-14. It's expected. They went into MetLife and they dominated. After Lamar Jackson had that fumble, I think the first drive of the game for the Ravens, he fumbled. After that, I think it was nothing but scores. It was so bad. They beat him so bad. It was so lopsided that Justin Tucker did not even have to kick a field goal. So, there's that. Yeah. The Houston Texans beat the Miami Dolphins 20-12. The Houston Texans, they locked up the AFC South with the Colts. Spoiler alert: with the Colts losing, the Jaguars losing, they locked it up. No coming back. Signed, still delivered. But there are still huge red flags about this Texans team. Their pass protection is still absolutely awful. I still think that C.J. Stroud needs to get someone like Tank Dell going. I think this team is too reliant on Joe Mixon. Even though Joe Mixon didn't even rush for 40 yards, I think that this pass defense has not shown that it's good enough to carry the team, even with all the pieces that they have. And honestly, I think that this game, Miami did everything in their power to give this game away, which they did. I mean, Tua had 3 interceptions, 2 of which I think was by Derek Stingley, who is an exceptional cornerback. And that's been the biggest issue with Miami, yo. Like, they kind of suffer the same thing that the Chargers suffer with. They can beat on bad teams, but when it go up against playoff teams, when they go up against teams they're supposed to beat, or teams that they could see in the playoffs potentially, they're not that good. Miami has, I think, a 1% chance or less than 5% chance to make the playoffs. This would have catapulted them to a really good chance. But Tua didn't play well. The defense The defense played okay. Again, it was really the interceptions from Tua that kind of killed him. But it goes back to Tua in big games. Like, even in that, Tua had more passing yards than C.J. Stroud. With all the weapons that C.J. Stroud had, Tua had 196. So, we're going to know a lot about this. We're going to learn a lot about this Texans team in the next week. because they have the Chiefs, I believe, on Saturday, and then they have the Ravens on Christmas. So we really about to learn a lot about this Texans team, but we'll see. Shouts out to the Texans for beating the Dolphins 20-12. Hey, man. Man, a win is a win. Shouts out to my mom. She bought me I think it was a Christmas gift. She bought me a Jaden Daniels jersey. I would wear it right now, but I'm not. I might wear it in the next coming episodes, but shouts out my mom for buying me a Jaden Daniels jersey. The Washington Commanders beat the New Orleans Saints 20-19. It's easy to look at this. There's a lot of ways you can look at this game. You can look at it as, why the hell did the refs or stop the clock for like 4 seconds? There was 9 seconds left in the game, and it stayed at 9 seconds for like 4 seconds, which allowed the New Orleans Saints to get off a last play that was ultimately a touchdown. I'm not going to say we were cheated, but that does seem fishy. You can look at that, or you can look at the fact of going into half, I think there was a 14-3 lead, and the Washington Commanders pretty much got hawked down the entire second half. You let Spencer Rattler go crazy. I don't know why Spencer Rattler wasn't starting in the first place, but yeah. Terry McLaurin did his thing. I think he had 2 touchdowns. Jaden Daniels, 226 yards. It's just that second half was hard to watch. Look, again, you could take the positive, but Jaden Daniels was sacked like 8 times. That's like, don't get me wrong. I know when you have Cam Jordan, you have Chase Young, the pass rush for the Saints is tough, but your quarterback can't take 8 sacks. I mean, that's not sustainable. And there's no question that the offense sputtered in the second half. And then the defense Spencer Rattler was just getting anything he wanted. But doesn't matter. No. They scored, and then they were like, you know what? We're leaving here with something. We're going to go for 2, which I have absolutely no problem with. Like, go big or go home. That's how I see it. It just didn't work out for them, though. Shouts out to Washington for beating the Saints 20-19. Shouts out, Ma, for giving me that Jordan Daniels jersey. You're a real one for that. Look, the Cincinnati Bengals beat the Tennessee Titans 37-27. To be honest with you, the only reason why they won is because Tennessee sucks. I'm sorry. Tennessee is not good. Do you know how many opportunities? Tennessee threw a pick 6. Will Levis got benched for Mason Rudolph, who threw an interception as well. Like, this team is not good. Now, yes, I didn't realize going into the game that Cincinnati had the number one offense in the league, which makes sense because they have Jamar Chase is about to have a triple crown. He has the most receptions, most passing yards, and most passing touchdowns, the triple crown. And then Joe Burrow, I think, is amongst the league leaders, at least top 3 to top 4 in passing yards. So that makes sense. But that defense still is not good. I mean, you still gave up 27 to a Tennessee team that had Mason Rudolph starting majority of the game. And you pick 6. Like, I don't know how many picks Will Levis is going to throw. Yeah. But I think the scenario is Cincinnati has to win out. they need a loss from the Colts and the Broncos, I think. No, they need a loss from the Colts and the Chargers. They just need one. No, Colts and Broncos or something. And they need both the Chargers or the Broncos to lose all their games, to lose the remaining 3 games. It's going to be big because next week, I think the Colts play Tennessee. And the Broncos, if I'm not mistaken, play who the hell the Broncos play? Hold on. Broncos. Boom. Thursday Night Football, they play the Chargers. So this is the game right here. This is the most important game for Cincinnati. Denver because they both have pretty tough schedules. But we'll see. But shouts out to Cincinnati. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but shouts out to Cincinnati for beating Tennessee 37-27. Is that? Yo. The Green Bay Packers beat the Seattle Seahawks 30-13. So exactly how you beat the Seattle Seahawks is exactly what the Green Bay Packers did. Jordan Love threw for 229 yards, and they continued to run the ball. I know 94 yards from Josh Jacobs doesn't look crazy, but he had timely first down after timely first down. That is how you beat them. And when Green Bay is playing at their best, that's what they do. That's how they win. But I do think it's hilarious, bro. So it's not funny that Geno Smith got hurt. I hope that it's not serious. I hope that he's able to come back for, his team. I don't wish injury upon anybody, but it's hilarious to see the reaction from Seahawks fans when they realize just how bad Sam Howell is. And people were like, there was one point where there was like 3-4 weeks where he was leading the league in passing yards. Since then, though, it's been a tough trail. And Seattle Seahawks fan got a taste of that front and center, and it's not a delectable dish, I'll tell you that. But shouts out to Green Bay for beating the Seahawks 30-13. Is that? Yeah. The Jets beat the Jaguars 32-25. And Devontae Adams had like 198 yards in the second half. The Jaguars, boy. But the Jets aren't that good. This was a back and forth bout. Mac Jones, 294 yards. Travis Etienne, 65 yards. Like, this was a back and forth bout until the end. And I think if it wasn't, I know Devontae Adams busted out for a 70-plus yard touchdown, but the Jets, they're just ready for this. I'll say this. There's a lot of issues with the Jets, man. And their number one issue is not Aaron Rodgers. It is their defense has cratered. Their defense is god-awful. Letting Mac Jones get almost 300 yards is egregious. Now, there's no coincidence that their defense has faltered once they fired a defensive coach. But, their defense is horrible. It's so bad. I would question re-signing Sauce Gardner. Like it's, yeah, man. They're, I guess they're trying to salvage whatever they can salvage by getting wins, but the season's over. So, shouts out to the Jets for beating the Jacksonville Jaguars 32-25. The Cowboys keep getting wins, man. As a Washington fan, it hurts my soul, but they keep getting wins. The Cowboys beat the Carolina Panthers 30-14. You know, this was the first game in so long that the Carolina Panthers were actually favored going into the game. And they laid a goose egg. They only scored 14 against Dallas's 30. Bryce Young threw for 219 yards. CeeDee Lamb 106. Shouts out to Dallas, man. You beat the Carolina Panthers. Dallas still has a shot to make the playoffs. I don't think they're going to make it, but they still have an outside shot. We'll see. We talked about Denver momentum. I said there was two games that momentum, we saw a play shift momentum. We talked about Najee Harris fumbling for the Steelers against the Eagles. The Denver Broncos beat the Colts 31-13. The Colts were up 13-10, I believe. And Jonathan Taylor, veteran running back, Jonathan Taylor runs, and they would go up two scores. And he fumbles the ball, I don't know why people do this. It doesn't make a lick of sense to me. But he fumbles the ball in celebration before the ball crosses he drops the ball before he crosses the plane. The ball goes out the back of the end zone. That is a touchback instead of a touchdown. So instead of being up, 21-10, you are now up and 21-10, have all the momentum. The the Broncos are struggling. Bo Nix has thrown 3 interceptions at this point. Can't get nothing going offensively. And you're about to be up 2 scores. You essentially give them the ball, and then they score 31. They score 21 straight points on you. Anthony Richardson start throwing interceptions It's momentum, man. I'm not saying Jonathan Taylor lost him the game, but once you give up momentum, it is a darn thing to go against, you know? And the way the game was going, I think an 11-point lead would have been, the way that the game was going, it would have been enough to win the game. But then it was just a snowball effect, and then boom, they lose. So, shouts out to Denver for beating the Colts 31-13. The Arizona Cardinals beat the New England Patriots 30-17. This team, the Cardinals team, is their best option is give the ball to James Conner. This is, it's quiet. It's not been quiet, but one storyline that's actually been permeating throughout the season is the emergence of the importance of a running back. When you see the type of season that Saquon Barkley's had, when you see the type of season that Derrick Henry's had, when you see how important someone like James Conner is, even though it's been much quieter than the previous two, but Jonathan Taylor has been good this season. It has been Josh Jacob. It's been a very important season and an emergence of importance for running backs. And when I look at this Arizona team, yes, you have Kyler Murray, who did have 224 yards. Yes, you have Marvin Harrison Jr. Yes, you have Trey McBride, which I didn't realize. Trey McBride has not scored a touchdown in the league yet. I didn't know that. This Arizona Cardinals team, like the Philadelphia Eagles, like the Baltimore Ravens, they're going to go as far as their running back takes them. Actually, Arizona is much more in that category than the previous two, but James Conner is great. And yes, New England is a bad team. They're just a bad team all around. But you see the most success that the Arizona Cardinals have is when James Conner has a good game. I'm just saying. Drake May is still good, but this New England team is not good in the slightest. So shout out Arizona for beating the Patriots 30-17. Atlanta beat the Raiders 15-9. Kirk Cousins wasn't good again. He was outplayed by Desmond Ridder. Bijan Robinson, another one, had 125 yards, though. Jesus. Raiders aren't good. Even though the Raiders did have 2 Hail Mary opportunities that they could have won the game. Kirk Cousins threw a touchdown, which he hasn't done the last few weeks, but he also threw another interception. Yeah, the more and more I watch the Falcons, the less I feel about their chances to do anything in the playoffs. I don't even know if they'll make the playoffs. Hell, their coach came out and said that Kirk Cousins need to play better. It's not good. They almost lost. First of all, as many weapons as they have, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Darnell Mooney, Bijan Robinson, to only score 15 points is kind of crazy. And on top of that, you were 6 points away. You were 2 Hail Marys away from losing to the Raiders. Desmond Ridder and the Raiders, might add. They got to play better. So, but hey, they got the win. Shouts out to them for beating the Raiders. It's 15-9. That has been week 15. So, lastly, before we go, I do want to briefly talk about this Dennis Schröder trade to Green Bay. Jesus loves you, Jalen. We're at the end of the episode, bro. I'm trying to get it. Before we go, I want to talk about the Dennis Schröder trade to the Golden State Warriors. This is a representation of a bunch of things. The Golden State Warriors that we saw in the beginning of the season, as many people predicted, has come. The plane has landed. When you are dependent heavily on people that haven't shown the ability to sustain greatness for a long period of time, you get what you get. When people are playing out of their minds, at some point, like I said, the boat is always going to find its level. And this trade could mean one of two things. It could be in play because now they can move Dennis Schröder's contract and get a bigger player. I mean, all we've heard all season, rightfully so, was that the Golden State Warriors are trying to go big game hunting. They need to get another star because they only have one star. They really only have one player that can consistently get his own shot. Unfortunately, that is Steph Curry. They thought it was going to be Pods, but that's going to be another point in a second. They could use this Dennis Schroder's contract, and they can piece him up with another player to get a big star, or they can keep him and he can be another scoring option because Dennis Schröder is having a career year, or at least he was having a career year. And I don't know if he comes off. He should probably come off the bench. It also is an admission that Pods has not been great. Brandon Pazinski, they were okay with letting Clay walk because they thought Brandon Pazinski was going to be that important for the team. He's been by far their worst player. And this Dennis Schröder move is acknowledging that they messed up with that. At least at this point, Pods is not ready. I said it before. Maybe if they get another star, I don't know. But then you have to also ask who you give up. But I think that window is closed. Steph Curry is still great, but now they're starting to lose to teams like the Hawks, or they just put Luka had like a 45-point triple-double on their head. Klay Thompson had 29 points. I think that game set the most threes in NBA history for both teams, like 28 or something, or 48 or something. So I think that this is a big move, and it could be a sign of things to come for Golden State. We'll just have to see. But I think it was a great move for them. I think it was a great move for Dennis Schröder. You go from a team that still kind of has high hopes in Golden State to from a team that had no hope of really anything in Brooklyn. So yeah, but that's there you have it. That's been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I truly appreciate you guys. If you want an Unpopular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, the link is in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm trying to get as many subscribers as possible. If you like the content, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to subscribe. It definitely means a lot. Also, please subscribe to the DSPs, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever you get your DSPs, wherever you're listening to this luscious voice of mine. If you like it, if you enjoy the content, please subscribe, please follow. It means a lot. Also, please follow the socials. Instagram, TikTok, I post pretty much daily, whether that's reels, whether that's stories, posts. If you want to go back and forth, that's probably the quickest way to get to me. Just keep it respectful, and I don't mind going back and forth. It just means that you are listening to me and you're passionate about whatever we're talking about. So please subscribe and please follow. It means a lot. Until next time, much love.